I said the last time I made one of these videos, that I'm sure absolutely nobody will want to watch for the most part, that I wasn't going to do another 60s record. But lo and behold, this morning I was thinking of something to listen to, and I randomly rifled through the vinyl collection and picked this out. King Crimson's In the Court of the Crimson King. To repeat myself from the last video, a very good album. But I do not say that in a shallow way. I truly do believe it is. And there's quite a story behind why I bought this. I obviously did not premeditate buying this. This was in the basement of an antique store. Obviously the vinyl sleeve is not in the best condition. There's a little tear here. It's kind of fallen apart. But still, for the most part, it's pretty well intact. You still get the inner gate sleeve, the lyrics, and the vinyl plays perfectly. Barely any scratches or pops, no skips. Plays wonderfully all the way through. So yeah, a very good listen. Even if I weren't a fan of it, it would not be hard to sit through because you don't have to deal with those pesky skips and pops and repeats that some records are subject to after either years of wear and tear or just plainly of just being manufactured horribly by the factory they came from, which is, I think, the case for some modern day remastered vinyl that you might find at bookstores and Barnes and Nobles and such. You know, they're brand new records, digital transfers, but still there'll inevitably be a part of the record that will keep skipping or repeating, even though it's a brand new record. Go figure. But this is probably a copy of the record from, I believe, the 1970s. I wouldn't say it's from the exact time it came out. I mean, looking at the sleeve that the record comes in, these are very 70s selections of albums, I do believe. Not quite 1969, you know, late 70s Bee Gees and lots of 70s sort of radio rock. Basically, yeah, not a lot of late 60s stuff here. Although some Rolling Stones selections. And a couple of Yes albums on this Atco rock selection. You gotta love the old vinyl in some ways. You know, it kind of reminds me of how cheesy the old days were. And not that things are still cheesy today. If you hear that, please don't mind it. That's just a train coming. I can do nothing about it. Or maybe, hold on a second. And so the train has finished carrying lumber or coal or whatever the hell it's carrying across the Ohio River, at least past my area of the city. So good on that. So back to what I was saying. I do enjoy this album very much. Now, when I got it, this was the summer of 2006, I believe, or maybe the spring of 2006. I just remember it was one part of my life. I was still living at my parents' house. A little over a year or close to a year after my dad died. My mom was somewhere else at the time. I was at my home all alone, just lying around, napping a little bit, and I remember listening to this record a little. That was the day I bought it. It wasn't a planned buy. I was very closed off to prog rock at the time. I still am not quite a big prog rock fan. I do not own any albums by Yes, don't ever plan to. I have never heard Van der Graaf Generator, and I do enjoy Pink Floyd very much, yes. I only have one Genesis record, and this is the only King Crimson record I have. And I don't think if it weren't for my interest in punk rock and buying a DVD in which the story of Bad Religion was told and how they started the Epitaph Records label. If not for that, I probably would not have ever thought to buy this. But I was a big Bad Religion fan, still am, not quite as much as I used to be, but at the time, I was into Bad Religion, and they referenced this album and the song Epitaph from this album. So it had me thinking, if Bad Religion likes King Crimson enough to name their record label after them, and to name a song from their 1990 album Against the Grain after it, 21st Century Digital Boy, there has to be something about this that is good. And putting on the turntable, oh my god, from the opening, the jazzy metal cacophony that is 21st Century Schizoid Man, to Epitaph, and then on the second side it's a little more mellow, a little more fluty, but still pretty good. Very very arty. I love the artiness of it. You know, it's not nonsensically arty. You know, it's not quite like what I've heard in Yes albums. Not a lot of nonsense lyrics about taking your liver and putting it in a different point of grace or whatever. To me, it makes sense. It all goes together. It's relevant to today in the 21st century. Oddly enough, it's, you know, things don't change. Time does not change. This came out in 1969, and I'm sure probably one thing that might have been on their minds, if they weren't just reading old Aleister Crowley novels, I believe they were probably thinking of the struggles of the times, the Vietnam War, most likely, and the Cold War, of course. That big dick measuring contest the Western world had going with the Soviets. I'm sure those were probably some influences that went to the lyrics of this album. The sorrow, confusion shall be my epitaph as I crawl a cracked and lonely path. If we make it, we can all sit back and laugh, but I fear tomorrow I'll be crying. I would say that can apply to today, and this America I live in such a confusing time of what is reality anymore, or that is my thought. And it's hard not to know what is truth and what isn't anymore, especially when a former reality TV star is my president. Yeah, times are pretty damn confusing for me. And probably just not because I have my own OCD-related issues. Which is why I have so many records, so many CDs, and I'm making a boring-ass video talking about it, which I hope at least one interested person might watch. Maybe a fellow King Crimson fan of some sort, or a vinyl collector. Although I shouldn't have said fellow King Crimson fan, because, yeah, this is the only King Crimson record I have. But I do enjoy it. It is, I mean, very good. It is, and I can hear where this band did influence bands that came after. I think I was a little close-minded in my last video talking about the White Album. Because the late 1960s was indeed a creative time. Not just with the Beatles or with the Velvet Underground, but I mean, the Byrds were doing creative stuff before they went totally country rock. Even during that time, they were being creative. But if you listen to the Notorious Byrd Brothers, that is one hell of a creative album for 1967. There's The Who, you know. At the same year that this album came out, they released Tommy. And, I mean, there's Frank Zappa. I could go on. And Pink Floyd, obviously. Although I gotta say, as much of a Pink Floyd fan I am, more so than King Crimson, I still find this to be a lot more listenable than a Saucerful of Secrets. But no diss on Pink Floyd, just that's how I feel. This is more of a cohesive effort, I feel. Very put together, very jazzy, heavy. You know, it's like they were kind of talking about the War Pigs a year before Black Sabbath did, it seems. And if anybody has kind of an open-minded view of music, no matter what they're into, if they're a metalhead, a prog rock sort of person, you know, who worships the altar of Yes, or if they happen to like the more punk rock side of things, like I have said millions of times, you know, if Bad Religion found something good in King Crimson, if Britain's The Subhumans found something good in King Crimson, I don't know how, you know, anybody else couldn't, you know, if you're, you know, unless you really are a strict fan of the music you like. I think this should be up your alley in some way, somehow, or it could not be.